Hey, this is Andrew Thomas from Masquerade, Quick Stops, and the upcoming Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. In celebration of the comic book creators exhibiting at FAN EXPO Canada 2023, here's my chat with Andrew Thomas about his work with Secret Stash Press and more. FAN EXPO Canada is the largest comic, sci-fi, horror, anime, and gaming event in Canada, and the third largest pop culture event in North America. The show has grown from a small comic book convention attracting 1,500 fans into a multifaceted and multi-day citywide event that attracts hundreds of thousands of people from all around the world. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. And if you want to help the site and the podcast, please consider supporting the effort by chipping in at ko-fi.com/True North Country Comics. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. Andrew is an award-winning artist and letterer from Mississauga, Ontario, who's worked for Disney, Archie, Chapter House Comics, and more. He's the artist on the award-winning Canadian comic book series Orc of the Great White North. He's illustrated covers and interiors for books such as Captain Canuck, Captain Canuck Adventures, Roar Man, and Archie's Friend Scarlet. In addition to illustration, Andrew is an accomplished letterer with credits including Captain Canuck, Northgard, Freelance, Die Kitty Die with Chapter House, Disney Princess with Joe Books, and others. Andrew's current work is with Secret Stash Press on various titles. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Andrew Thomas about his work with Secret Stash Press and more at FAN EXPO Canada. Andrew Thomas, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, thank you very much, John, for having me.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started with all the questions, though, I want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today?
I've actually been rereading John Layman and Rob Guillory's Chew. It's actually one of my all-time favorite indie books from Image, and I read that at least once every couple of years, from start to finish. And I think I'm probably through maybe halfway through volume 5 at the moment. I think there's 11 or 12. I might be wrong there, but yeah, it's always been a fun read. Like I enjoy going back to it because I tend to forget a lot of the details. So it's kind of been entertaining just to reread them, and so it's been a lot of fun so
Cool.
far.
Good. Now, we're talking because you're going to be exhibiting at FAN EXPO Canada in August. And with that in mind, I'm wondering if you can recollect any favorite memories from that convention in the past or any other recent conventions.
Outside of my work, I mean, I probably one of my favorite memories was actually back in 2013, even before I started doing conventions at all. I went to, I think it was the Toronto Comic Con, the one in March, and me and a friend went, and I got to meet William Shatner.
Oh, cool.
And as a big Star Trek fan, and that was a big deal for me. And it was kind of notable because surprisingly there wasn't a lot of people waiting up in line. I was maybe like there was at the time I got there was maybe 2 or 3 people ahead of me. It was I guess it must have been a bit of a different ball game back then because the way the guests, like the layout was situated. But there was only a couple of people, surprisingly, and I got to go up to him, and I brought with me my Blu-ray copy of the Star Trek the original series, season 1, and I got him to autograph that, and it was just incredibly surreal because just a kid watching him growing up, and so getting I didn't really get to chat with him too much. It was just kind of like, hey, how are you, big fan, the things that he always hears.
Right.
that kind of thing. And it
Yeah.
was just kind of like he signs it and he said thank you, and I just kind of went on my way. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my god, that was Captain Kirk. I'm just kind of fanboying. So yeah, that was the I try and I have it here. It's just displayed to this day, and yeah, no, that was fun. I guess the more recent memory was last year when I got to meet Kevin Smith in person
Nice.
at the Calgary Expo in April of last year,
Hmm.
and I was a guest artist there, and one of the cool perks about being that is I get to actually bypass the lines if I wanted to go see another guest, which was pretty cool. So I told my I guess the program manager, and I said, hey, I really want to go watch. I want to go see Kevin Smith. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And we were in a different building at the time too. So they had to, they put me in a golf cart and they drove me to the the other building. And at the time, there was this huge, massive lineup for Kevin, and Jay was actually there beside him too, at the same booth. So
Hmm.
they snuck me in there, and I got to meet Jay, and I got to finally meet Kevin, and I asked him about. Well, I actually didn't even have to ask him anything because at that point I already had spoken to him, online, and I was
Right.
part of his club. So, and he knew that I was lettering comics, for a living, and so he shakes my hand and he goes, "You're the fat man who letters," which is my Instagram handle,
Hmm.
and so that was funny. I'm like, yes, I am. And at the time, he just recently announced that he was doing new comics under Secret Stash Press and with
Hmm.
Dark Horse, and he offered me right on the spot. He says, "I see you letter comics." I'm like, "Yeah," and he says, "Well, do you want to come on board?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Wow.
So
That's
I
cool.
didn't even have to ask him anything about it. He offered me the spot right then and there. But the after that happened, it was just like a couple like 2 3 minute exchange, and then I left, and then the worry started creeping inside because I'm like, oh my god, he just made a con promise, and
Hmm.
he's not going to remember. He's not going
Uh,
to remember this at all. Sure enough. 2 weeks later, I get an email from the editor at Dark Horse saying, "Hey, Kevin wants you to come on board. Here's the contract for Masquerade and Quick Stop." So
wow.
they gave me both books right off the bat. So it was very entertaining. I was on cloud nine that whole
I
weekend. So
bet. That's very fortuitous, because not too often, like you get to meet your heroes at these shows, right?
yeah,
Typically, you go in there and go, "Hey, he's so far away, and I'll never get a chance to meet him." But you took the extra effort, and had you not done that, gosh, who knows what would have happened,
that's
right?
and that kind of goes back to just a philosophy of mine is just to find an opportunity and take it. The worst that he could have said was no. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like
mm.
if I were to ask him, he could have said no, and that would have been it. But if I don't, you know, take those opportunities, then I wouldn't, have gotten, those gigs. I'm gonna commend myself for being brave enough to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, absolutely.
typically, yeah, typically I haven't really I haven't really done that in the past. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. I didn't really think highly of myself and my work, and I'm just like, oh well, this it's that self-deprecating
Right, right, right.
thoughts
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we tend to have every now and then. Anyway, but yeah, so I kind of boasted up the courage to go finally go talk to him, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, well, congrats on that. That's for sure. That was going to be one of my questions. You skipped right to it, but that's great that you explained your secret origin story about Kevin Smith's Secret Stash Press and how you got involved, which is amazing. So, can I assume that you'll be promoting some of those books at Fan Expo Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have I did a an exclusive cover that Kevin asked me personally to do for Quick Stops #1, and that was it was a store exclusive for his shop in New Jersey. So he asked me, yeah, so he owns the Jane Silent Bob Secret Stash in Red Bank, New Jersey, and he says, "Hey, do you want to? I know you draw. Do you want to do a cover for issue 1?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we went back and forth, and that was the I think one of the coolest things that I kind of taken from the experience is just that I talk to him on a regular basis now, and just like I it's I'm just name dropping here. It's like, yeah, I can text Kevin Smith whenever I want. No, No, but it's a very fortunate thing. Like because one thing that I learned right off the bat, when especially when I was doing the lettering for the comics, was he wanted to oversee the edits, and personally.
Hmm.
So he
Hmm.
wanted to oversee them. He wanted to make sure because he is a writer himself,
Yep.
and he wanted to make sure everything was perfect. So he says, send it to the editor, but also send it to me. And then
Yeah.
he'll send me notes directly through text. He says, okay, this is what I want you to do in
Hmm.
A, B, C. So that it's great. And then and then if I've had questions or if I've had been able to ask a favor here and there.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of cool to have that back and forth with him. And surprisingly, despite contrary to what people would think, he's actually very lax in that regard in like the editorial part, especially for comics.
Hmm.
He would like per issue he would only have maybe like 3-4 notes on average per book, and that would surprise me because I'm like, oh, I was expecting pages of notes.
Right. 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 Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even, it wouldn't even be dialogue based. It would just be simple, placements where it's like, oh, this would be better. The flow would be better if that
Hmm.
particular balloon was over here and this and that.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so yeah, so that was pretty cool. Getting to do that. And so, yeah, I'm going to have copies of my cover of Quick Stops #1. I'll probably have some copies of Masquerade as well. I do tend to have a few copies of the books that I letter on my shelves at shows.
That's cool. That's cool. Now, for those people who aren't reading these books, are they typically about Kevin Smith's alter ego, Silent Bob, or are there different
So
stories going
yeah,
on?
so Quick Stops is an anthology series, and it's all based inside the View Askew universe, which is his movie universe. And they are just anecdotes of each issue is about a different character, and it's just about a little thing. It's about a reference. It'll be like expanding upon a reference from a movie. Like in the movie, they'll say, "Oh, remember that time? Randall's cousin, died. In some in some manner." And one of the issues will be explaining how he died. So that whole thing is about Randall and Brody attending their cousin's wedding.
Hmm.
No, sorry, funeral, not wedding.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
So yeah, they're just each issue standalone, and they're also drawn by different artists too. Very fantastic, artists. They all bring a very unique style to Kevin, to Kevin's characters. And Masquerade is an original story, and it's basically if a social media influencer kind of moonlights as an assassin, and she has personal vendetta with some shady characters. But the fact that the problem is that because she's so well known, she it wouldn't be easy for her to kind of be that vigilante. So she has this device which she's able to morph her own face into somebody else's face.
Ah,
Hence,
okay.
hence the name Masquerade.
Right.
So yeah, very it's a hard R type story.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so Masquerade is an 8 issue run. The first 4 issues have been collected into a hardcover already,
Hmm.
and we're up to issue 7 now. In terms of the release schedule, with issue 8, I think coming out with the next couple months.
Mm.
And Quick Stops was only 4 issues, but I hear that he's going to be doing more, so that's always fun.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those are the 2 current titles for Secret Stash Press. But Kevin's been public, and he said that there's possibility for more down the road.
There you go. Well, lots to see at your table when people come by to see you at Fan Expo. That's for sure.
I'm not going to have enough room. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
There you go. Well, want to switch gears here a wee bit and talk about the tools used to create your art. Can you walk us through your creative process?
Yeah, so for art, really, especially when I'm at home, I have a Wacom Cintiq, an old one actually. And so I draw most of everything I do is digital now, and it's done strictly on Photoshop. And so I have a bunch of custom brushes, and I have already like layouts ready to go for pages when I'm drawing Auric or if I'm drawing another project. And then that's really about it. But for lettering, I use Illustrator.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so I have this huge lettering template that I've been built up over the years, and which I've kind of spent more time kind of refining over over time, simply because that's been the prior my number one 9 to 5 gig. So it's the most what I spend most of my time on. So yeah, mainly just to Adobe Pro, Illustrator and Photoshop, and very rarely do will I draw traditionally, but I will at a convention. So that's probably like one of the only times that I draw traditionally is when I'm behind a table at a con.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. If you're so into digital, which is a great thing, how do you then switch gears when you go to conventions if someone asks for a commission?
Yeah, so typically, yes, I do kind of pull it back with traditional, and I only offer, just I just do black and white
Ah, hmm.
commissions, whether if it's on a sketch cover, or sometimes I'll have some like 11 by 14 paper. So I'll be able to do that kind of on the spot. But I also do offer people a traditional commission as well, whereas I can give them a digital color as well. So not only they could have the original inks, so to speak, but then they could also have a digital copy that would also be fully colored, and then be able to print that off and frame it and what have you.
Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, you've been talking about some of your projects with Secret Stash Press. I'm wondering, do you have any other up and coming projects that you're allowed to talk about?
Actually, as a matter of fact, I can. Just recently, I announced that I'm going to be doing a variant cover for Star Trek: Strange New Worlds.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a huge deal for me. It's also me being a huge Trekkie as well. So that was a big bucket list item. I always told myself I want to get myself on a Star Trek property in some shape or form. And thanks to the fine folks at Cap Can Comics here in Brantford, Ontario, they're primarily an online retailer. They offered me the opportunity, and they said, yeah, if the price is right, we could do an exclusive in store variant cover for them, and
Nice.
yeah, so it's coming out on August 23rd. Pre-orders are still going on right now. They're also offering CGC services as well, so you can get it graded with a 9.8 copy. You can get it signed, you can get it remarked, so they're doing fantastic work over there. And yeah, so if the mail gods be willing, we're gonna be having a bunch of copies at Fan Expo as well.
That's cool. That's something to look forward to for sure. For sure. Well, Andrew, I've been asking creators about the use of AI in comic book creation. I know this is a bit out of left field, but I
Yeah,
wanted to get your take. Do you think that AI is helpful or harmful to comic book creation?
when it comes to comic books, I don't think that there is a place for AI. I simply don't think that we can. Uh, and a lot of it stems from not only the moral implications but the ethical implications of how these AI tools are being built, how these models are being built, and by and large, the community is very much against it because I guess it really boils down to the fact that it feels like cheating. It just kind of feels like cutting corners and not in the best way, because from afar the results could look they could look good, but you really go in and you'll see there's a lot of incongruities, and there's a lot of AI models. They're not good at sequential storytelling.
Hmm.
I've seen especially across my feed a lot of sample AI comics, and it's yes, the colors are pleasing to look at. It's visually pleasing. However, from a storytelling point of view, it's got a long way to go, because a lot of the character models are pretty much recycled from panel to panel. It's like they're in the exact same pose with the exact same facial expression. There are places for AI yeah, in the tech industry, when they're performing tasks that are far beyond a single human's capabilities, then sure. But no, I think when it comes to such a subjective field, and a very personal field such as anything art related, I think you gotta put in the work. I think you if you really want to do it, I think you study and learn how to
Okay.
do it. And
Yeah.
yes, so I'm rambling here only
No, but
because
yeah. I wanted to get your insight, so I appreciate that. No, that's all good. It's all good. Wanted to ask you then, with all that we've been talking about, do you have a website where you recommend that people go to find out more about your current and your future projects?
so I do have a portfolio website, but it's mainly just to kind of show other creators and just kind of for reference, for people that are looking for certain to hire creators to do future projects. But for everyone else, I direct everyone to my social media. Instagram and Threads is the Fat Man Who Letters, and now I'm on Blue Sky, which is just Fat Man Who Letters. Drop the THE at the beginning, and that's where you basically can find me.
Cool, cool. Well, Andrew, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there any other question I didn't ask that you want to get across this interview?
I think we're good. I mean, I definitely wanted to drop the Star Trek Strange New Worlds news, so there was. I'm glad I found a place for it, but yeah, I'm looking forward to everyone that's going, and I'm looking forward to Fan Expo, and I always do, and it's going to be a great time.
Thanks to Andrew for the chat. You can discover more about Andrew online at armelimonline.com and on Instagram at the Fat Man Who Letters. Thanks for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. If you want to help the site and the podcast, please consider supporting the effort by chipping in at ko-fi.com/True North Country Comics. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2023.